are these people?
I'm going to try not to cry during this story. No promises. It's a rough one. If you've been on social media, you've been seeing the new horrors Israel is committing on Gaza after the second round of the ceasefire has failed to come to fruition. Not that Israel honored the ceasefire in any capacity. So we'll talk about that probably sometime soon. But I wanted to highlight at least the journalists here that are being murdered. So we're going to get into that, but I wanted to just start everyone with this. So the smell of death returns to Gaza, writes Jannah Ahmad Abu Sitta, writing over at the EI, the Indie Media Award honoree. So they write, I don't know what time it is. I don't remember what day it is. I don't know what's happening. All I know is that I am now awake and the occupation's missiles are shaking the ground. I turn on my phone and look into the glow of the small screen, the 18th of March, 2025 at 2 a.m. 5 minutes before I was in a deep sleep, hours before my family and I had gathered for a meal at our home in Khan Yunis. Despite the sadness in Gaza, we have tried to make Ramadan nights beautiful. My mother was making tea on the stove and had gathered cookies for the family. Then we went to bed, dispersing around the house, each of us taking a corner to sleep in or to read until we fell asleep. But now I'm awake, and I consider that perhaps the entire population of the Strip is also waking up at this very moment because the explosions are so loud. We are in a terrifying new reality. Minutes pass and the sounds of bombardment get louder. Explosions continue, and I try to decipher how near they are. My little sister is also awake and crying, and I try to calm her down, but my own anxiety is unbearable. I don't know how to describe how I feel now. I am writing from a big building near the Nasser Medical Complex. I am watching the ambulances and cars rush by in desperate attempts to save one soul from death. But I also sense that each ambulance carries one soul that is departing this earth. It has been a month since I smelled death in Gaza, but now it comes back to me with ease. I try to write about hope and strength, but the only voice I can channel now is the one of horror inside me. I'm writing to you now, not knowing if we will survive this time, or if we will see the sunrise tomorrow. We didn't have our own pre-dawn meal, and my mother has now warned us to stay away from the balcony lest shrapnel hit us. Time passes, and morning comes. My brother went to the hospital to see if he knows anyone who has been wounded. There at the morgue, he said that many journalists had arrived, along with people looking for their loved ones. A man guarding the morgue shouted, "Stay away, and please don't take pictures." He asked that the crowds respect the women's privacy. Today we had planned a shopping day for my little sister to pick out new clothes for Eid, but now we will stay inside. We are good people with deep feelings. We dream of journeys other than displacement and living in something other than tents. We grieve when we bury our children, and we try to understand how death has become ordinary. How can a few people control the fate of another people? So that just being a introduction to the horrors that have re-arrived in Gaza, but this is from Julia Conley. That person mentions journalists coming to the morgue. We're going to talk about them specifically. So I wanted to bring the last story of one of those said journalists before Israel murdered him. Deliberately, I might add. So colleagues of Al Jazeera journalist Hossam Shabat on Monday posted the Palestinian reporter's own words on social media after he was killed in what was reportedly a target attack by U.S.-backed Israeli forces in northern Gaza. If you're reading this, it means I have been killed, most likely targeted by the IOF, said Shabat in the statement before his death. When this all began, I was only 21 years old, a college student with dreams like anyone else. For the past 18 months, I have dedicated every moment of my life to my people. I documented the horrors in northern Gaza minute by minute, determined to show the world the truth they tried to bury. I was a third-year college student before this genocide started, but I'll never be able to finish my studies because Israeli occupation forces bombed my university and every other university in Gaza. Thanks to the brave college students who are protesting and advocating for us. We see you and hear you. Don't stop. So Shabbat had been reporting for Al Jazeera Mubashir on the Israeli assault on Gaza that began in October in retaliation for a Hamas-led attack, documenting the destruction of northern Gaza and the impact of Israel's blockade and attacks on the people there. Witnesses told Al Jazeera that Shabbat's car had been targeted in Bet Lahia, and his colleague at the network, Tariq Abzu Azum, reported the Israeli forces carried out the strike without any prior warning. Also on Monday, an Israeli airstrike killed Palestinian Today journalist Muhammad Mansour, as well as his wife and son. They were killed in their home in Khan Yunis, Abu Asum reported. So Hassam Shabbat posted about his colleague who was killed by Israeli forces in Gaza earlier today. 2 hours later, Hassam was assassinated. Israel is targeting journalists, killing them one by one until there's no one left to report on the genocide, which is a war crime. War crime. Fee. Israel kills journalists and babies on a regular basis with money and weapons from our government in D.C., and we still have stupid U.S. Americans arguing that Iran shouldn't have nukes, but don't mind Israel having them as they commit multiple genocides. We are a doomed bunch. So, again, bringing up this Muhammad Mansour. But video shows a deeply emotional farewell from the father of journalist Muhammad Mansour, who was killed by Israel. In the heart-wrenching video, the father is seen crying as he says, "I wish I were the journalist instead of you." According to reports, the total number of journalists killed by Israel in Gaza has risen to over 200. And you can see that caption. He asked his son to get up and speak. So you can go watch that video if you so wish at Mint Press News on Twitter. So Abu Bakr Abed, me and Indy have brought his speeches frequently. He writes, "I have lost words. I know Hassam and how polite and amazing he is. I am deeply heartbroken and infuriated. I don't know what to say. I am seeing my colleagues hunted before my eyes." So I would advise him to please stay as safe as possible. Fee, rest in power now and every single day. Fuck Israel. Couldn't agree more, Fee. And you see here Hassam putting on the press jacket and helmet once again, thinking that they might have peace for a minute, but apparently Israel wishes that to not be a thing. So, but Misty, Israel has murdered this man, yet another journalist, and as always, as Misty has done frequently, almost every day, writes, "Fuck Israel." So, Eva Karine Bartlett, the Israelis have killed courageous Palestinian journalist Hassam Shabbat. I'm stunned, not because of the barbarism of the Israelis, but because Hassam reported so long, so courageously, with so many close calls, I somehow thought he had passed the worst and would survive. Devastating. May his soul rest in peace, and his friends and family find solace, and the loved ones of all over 200 Palestinian journalists in Gaza murdered by Israeli soldiers in the past year and a half alone. So, the government media office in the Gaza Strip announced on Monday that the number of Palestinian journalist martyrs has risen to 208 since the start of the war. So, Kamal Sharaf's amazing artistic work here. So, if you notice, made in US. So, pretty accurate. Again, I feel like it's important to highlight the artists as well. Here's Marim Ali with her work. You only target journalists when your enemy is the truth. So, couldn't agree more. And again, Marim Ali with her work. Just impeccable stuff and amazing like technique there. Good on you. But Robert, in Lakesh, being a journalist in Gaza, one of the most heroic professions where you are hunted for telling the truth. Palestinian journalists in Gaza are braver than any racist soldier, hiding like a coward and pressing buttons to commit mass murder, killed by liars for telling the truth. So Hassan was 19. Hassan was 23. Ishmael was 27. Israel killed all of them. All three of these young men are now dead because Israeli kills journalists while they blame terrorism. Israel are the terrorists who need to go. So this is again Hassan Shabbat saying he's still carrying the torch after the passing of his two colleagues. So yeah. But to continue this article, Mansour and Shabbat's death bring the number of journalists who have been killed in Gaza to 208. The commitment to protect journalists called for an independent investigation into whether Shabbat and Mansour were deliberately targeted. The deliberate and targeted killing of a journalist of a civilian is a war crime, Jody Ginsburg, the group's chief executive, told Al Jazeera. Dropsite News, where Shabbat was a contributing reporter on the bombardment of Gaza, said it holds Israel and the U.S. responsible for killing Hassan. So, and I'm not the biggest fan of Dropsite, but you know how people talk about unity and that we should be for those we may disagree with? This is what that means. Not any of that other stuff. This is the murdering of journalists. This is what you stand for.
Right.
So, Dropsite News, where Shabbat was a contributing reporter on the bombardment, said it holds Israel and the U.S. responsible for killing Hassan. In October, the IDF forces included Shabbat and 5 other Palestinian reporters on a hit list. Hassan regularly received death threats by call and text, said the outlet. What we have witnessed for nearly a year and a half is the Israeli military engaging in a systemic campaign to kill Palestinian journalists as well as the member of their families. So here's that list, right? We have, let's see if I can read these. Come on. Talal Muhammad Abdul, Alsa Abdul Aziz, Jamal Mahood al-Shartel, and the 3 that, we've already mentioned. So, Ashraf, Sami, and Shor Saraj. So, please be safe if you're anyone involved. So, Israel just murdered Hassan Shabbat. He is the 251st journalist murdered by Israel during its mass murder spree and second journalist Israel killed today. So again, conflicting numbers. So I wanted to bring at least the higher ones so far. But this video I thought was important to bring. So Hassan Shabbat, who has been targeted by the UF as someone they're going after, says he doesn't care. So he was asked about being targeted, and this was his response.
استنى شوي، شو شعورك وانت هيك منزلين عنك اليهود؟ قدم شوي.
ولا يثنينا شيء.
It hasn't affected me at all. May God bless you, and I'm steadfast. And right now we're headed to show the world. God be with you, my loves. So he was, incredibly brave. So Ison responds, I can't stop crying. So Robert Durden, we will never forget and we will never forgive those responsible for this evil. He was on with Indy recently. Go check that out. But yeah, agreed, Robert. Seed Mohammed Marandi says, Zionists murdered 2 journalists in Gaza today. Do you think mainstream Western journalists will express outrage? Of course not. The cowards effectively support the Gaza Holocaust. Gordon Dimmack, don't expect BBC News or Sky News or GB News to talk about this murder of another heroic journalist. They are owned, occupied, and paid by the very Zionist terrorists who did it. Shabbat had filed a story for Dropsite just hours before he was killed about Israel's resumption of its scorched earth bombing of Gaza last week that killed over 400 people, including nearly 200 children in a matter of hours. As Dropsite published Shabbat's vital dispatch, journalist and editor Sharif Abdel Kadu wrote that he was one of a handful of reporters who remained in northern Gaza through Israel's genocidal war. His ability to cover one of the most brutal military campaigns in recent history was almost beyond comprehension, wrote Kadu. He bore witness to untold death and suffering on an almost daily basis for 17 months. He was displaced over 20 times. He was often hungry. He buried many of his journalist colleagues. In November, he was wounded in an Israeli airstrike. I still can't believe I am referring to him in the past tense. Israel obliterates the present. So, this is footage from Mint Press, right? They captured the profound impact that Hussam Shabbat had on the children of Palestine, inspiring them to aspire to careers of journalism. In this video, a child expresses her desire to become one, questioning, how am I supposed to be a journalist if Hussam Shabbat was martyred? Her statement underscores the fear and confusion felt by young aspirants due to the dangers faced by journalists in conflicted zones. So let me pull that up. What do you mean why? When the occupation into the north, we were about to mourn you, man. I swear. Was it that bad? What do you believe in? That there is no God but Allah. I swear to God that I came down to see you. So you missed us? I swear I missed you all. You're a real champ. What do you want to be when I grow up? A journalist. How am I supposed to be a journalist now if Hussam is martyred? But how am I supposed to become a journalist? And what will make you into a journalist? Do you want to become a journalist? God willing, you'll become one. So shout out for Mint Press for grabbing that footage. But I will continue. Abu Bakr Abed, a month later, they hunted him, left his family with deep anguish that will stay with them forever. I can't imagine. I can't even fathom this pain. He's responding to Shabbat, who had finally reunited with his mother after 492 days. He's finally hugging his mom. So, and I wanted to bring some more statements about that. Hussam writes, my mother told me before she fled to the south of the Strip, continue covering in the north, and she didn't seem worried about me. She thought that since I was a journalist, I was protected. She said the sentence that I remember every day for the past 10 months. You're a journalist, son. They won't bomb you. Don't worry. Today, Mom, we said goodbye to our colleague, friend, and beloved Ismail Al-Ghul. Mom, your words are true, but only outside of Gaza. Here with the criminal occupation army, journalists are targeted before civilians. In all countries, my mother's words are true. Journalists are protected all over the world, except in Gaza, where they are targeted. So, Martyr of Gaza writes, he was pleading with you for help. Here he is writing, your stand in front of the Zionist terrorist occupation embassies and in the streets of your countries is more rightful and necessary than supporting Gaza with just prayers in the prayer niche. So Abu Bakr Abed writes again, Hussam has been pleading for you to help for over 17 months. No one ever stepped up. No one. This is what the world has allowed. You will see more of this. This is what you should expect. We are talking to deaf ears and blind eyes. We are bearing the brunt of this tragedy. One of Hussam Shabbat's last Instagram stories before he was killed wrote, on behalf of the Emirates, O people of the Emirates, O people of Saudi Arabia, O people of Jordan, O people of Egypt,